Welcome to another episode of We Don't Die. I'm your host, Sandra Champlain, author of the book We Don't Die, A Skeptic's Discovery of Life After Death. And if you're enjoying these episodes that I bring to you, I'd like to invite you to come meet me live in person. I'll be one of 27 speakers at the Afterlife Research and Education Symposium, September 15th through 17th in Scottsdale, Arizona. I promise there is nothing like it on planet Earth with the speakers that will be coming to you, not only about proof of the afterlife, but cutting edge information, how people are getting in touch with their loved ones, and some even information about preparing for end of life, which is necessary. So if you're interested, visit afterlifestudies.org to find out more. Today on the show, I'm pleased to introduce you to Alec Laidler, a financial services professional living in England who had a near-death experience, but says that he experienced his greatest awakening after losing his wife Pat to breast cancer in 2011. He's the author of two books, Granddad, You Have a Message, and Granddad, You Have a Message Too, Through the Eyes of a Child, and he's currently working on his third book. His website is granddadbooks.com, and I know there are some words of inspiration for all of us in this episode today. So, Granddad Alec Laidler, welcome to We Don't Die Radio.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody.
Thanks for being here. I find your story very important, and I'm excited to hear more about you and how this all came about. Would you first, maybe Alex, start off with telling us about a little bit who you are, where you live, and a little bit of your past before you got into writing about the afterlife?
Okay, well, I've recently moved to North Wales, a place called Anglesey, and I live in the port town of Holyhead, which is the ferry town between England and Ireland.
Oh,
Or
okay.
Wales and Ireland.
All right.
This was a move I had to make. I lived in the West Midlands in England after my wife, passed away. Tried to put my life back together again. Found it very, very difficult to not move on, but to carry on. And Pat's still a very important part of my life. She's part of everything I do, but I couldn't do other things. I mean, to have a girlfriend, another girlfriend. I mean, I'm not a young chap, but I still like female company. And I found it really difficult to have female company in my home.
Yes.
And to move up the road sort of thing wouldn't have done it. It turned out that my wife's sister, who lived in Holyhead, had got leukemia, and I was coming up every other weekend to look after her and husband and help him, teach him to cook and whatnot. And I just fell in love with the place. And I look out my bedroom window, I can see the sea, I walk the beach every day. I've lost 5 stone in weight.
Wow.
And I am as healthy now as I've ever been in my life, and I am happy.
Wow, that's terrific. Grief, I know personally, is the worst pain I've ever felt. And I'm assuming, and I've not been in a loving relationship with a partner for many years to know even how much worse that pain is. You don't have to dig up all the past memories, of course, but maybe a little bit about Pat and what happened.
Well, Pat was a fabulous woman. I mean, I'm going to say that, but she truly was. She was a one-off woman. Fell in love with the very first day I met her.
Oh.
And I've got to say, it was the same. She rang me the day after I met her, and she said something along the lines of, "Don't say anything. I love you. I'm going to marry you. We're going to be together forever." And I said, "Oh yeah, can I just remind you, you're married?"
Oh.
And I said, "Look, I don't do married women. It's not my saying. I'm sorry. The lovely words to hear, but it's not for me."
Right.
And I then set about castrating the guy who'd given my phone number. And he said, well, Alec, it's not always, things aren't always what they seem. And the marriage is very rocky. She's left him 3 times. He's done nasty things to her. And so I rang her back and I said, look, if you sort your life out and you still want to go out, then I'll go out with you. But other than that, it's not for me. Mm-hmm. And about 6 months later, I was sat in my office, waiting to go on some calls, night calls. I normally switch the phone off because it's sort of a cup of coffee time before I go out, but I didn't. And the phone rang and it was Pat. And she'd done all the things I had asked her to do. So what could I do? So we went out and I met the love of my life.
Oh, wonderful.
And we talk about grief. I mean, I lost my dad when I was 30. I'm a little bit older than that now.
Yeah. As you're a granddad, you would be.
Yeah.
That's so cute.
Granddad. And I grieve for my dad. I used to see him in the street and things like that, or imagined I did. But I think now, knowing what I know, I probably did. My mum, I lost some 2003 from a brain tumour, and my sisters and I nursed her. Wow. Over the weeks. I used to travel up to the northeast to do my stint, and the love of a mum is sort of the nth degree. My niece asked her if she was ready to die, and she said, oh yeah, I'm ready. She said, but I can't go yet. They're not ready. So even at the moment of about to pass, she was still thinking of her 3 kids. And I found that, and the thing about grief, it is the love. My love for Pat, I can't even begin to describe it. She could have done anything, and she did. But it didn't matter because she was happy. And if she was happy, then I was happy. And, if we didn't have that love, the grief wouldn't be anywhere near as painful as what it is, because it's the love that causes the pain.
Yes.
The grief is the pain. And we're not grieving for the person that's passed. We're grieving for our loss. We're grieving for the pain, the hurt, the disbelief, the anger.
Yes.
That's caused by someone passing. And I find that it's the love. The love is the glue that cements us together. Whether we're in this form or in the spiritual form, that love is still there. And that's what keeps us together. And I know that because my wife and I are as much one today as we were when she was here.
That is interesting, and I have not spoken to anyone like you, and I would love to find out what happened. Before we start talking about that, did you indeed have a near-death experience yourself?
20 years ago, I'd had a relationship with another Pat.
Another Pat?
That I thought was the one for me.
Yeah.
But she decided it wasn't for her. And I was grieving, to be honest, for the loss of someone I thought was going to be with me. And I was taking some pills for a stiff neck, and they actually eroded the walls of my stomach.
Oh.
And I had a massive bleed at work. To be fair, I don't remember much about it because I was out most of the time.
Which is a good thing.
But I suppose so. But I can remember going into work after being to the doctors. The doctor had told me I'd got the flu and to go home again. I couldn't stand being at home on my own anyhow, so I went to work. And my partner came in and he said, God, I don't know what's the matter with you, but you've just changed 3 different colours in seconds, and you're now a horrible looking green. Anyway, we decided to go for lunch, which we did every day. And I told him he'd have to drive, which he didn't do every day. And I went out to the car and I just collapsed. I had a pain and I just collapsed. And the next door to me was a butcher, and he ran out, picked me up and carried me into the office and then rang for an ambulance. While I was sat in the office, I just had this enormous pain. I thought I'd had a heart attack, really. But I could feel this surge happening inside of me. And I ran into the gents, and the blood just came up. And I watched my life going down a toilet pan. In the ambulance, I could hear the medics saying, "We haven't got a pulse." Mm. And I can remember me saying, "But you must have, because I'm talking to you." And I was later told that was the moment that I'd passed and come back. Then in the hospital, twice in a day, within the 24 hours, the second time they brought me back, the third time I was stood beside the surgeon while he was actually sorting me out. And I thought to myself, if I get out of this, I'm going to change, because I cannot survive the way I am. Well, I'm talking to you. Mm-hmm. So I obviously got out of it. And it was like being in a circle, going round and round and round, making the same mistakes over and over again. And the universe at that point decided, Alec, get out of this circle and go into that one. And I did. And at the same time, 20 miles away, a young lady was being told, Pat, get out of this circle and go into that one. And we met.
Beautiful.
But that was the outer bodies. And when I was 11 years old, living in a mining village in County Durham, I had an out-of-body experience while I was asleep. I woke up and I found myself in the corner of the ceiling looking down on my body. I never told anybody. I think I was 30 years old when I told somebody about that. Because to be fair, living in a small community like that, to admit that you've had an out-of-body experience that have took you away in a way.
Oh, they think you're crazy.
Yeah, they would have done. So I just kept quiet about it.
Wow.
But I've always known. My mum used to say to me, "You're a strange boy, you are." But I knew I was different. I've always known that I was different. When I was I started work, I used to have to sort drawings and engineering drawings out. And I'd look at things and I'd think, oh my God, what's this? I'd go home, do you know what? And in the night, I'd dream about it and I'd sort it all out. Go to work the next day and put it together.
That's incredible.
You know, and that's how my dad and I were very, very close. And on a Saturday morning, my mum worked at a special unit for children who'd been burnt. And so she was always working on a Saturday. But my dad and I were very close, and we'd have the radio on. I'm going back now to 1960, I suppose. We'd have the radio on, and there'd be pop music on and whatever it was of the day. And I'd start singing something else, and the next music on would be what I was singing. And he would say to me, "How do you do that?" And I go, "Do what?" Because I didn't realize I was doing it. There were strange times, to be fair. Once I got married, and I've been married more than once, but we won't go into that.
Okay.
But I have been married more than once. But once I started having a family and a mortgage and stuff, I never had time. And everything just went by the way. And I was pretty successful at work. I've run a good business, and we sold all that a few years ago, because when Pat died, I just didn't want to earn. I don't need money anymore.
Right.
Not that I've got any, but I just don't need money. I don't look at money anymore as as a thing that I've got to strive to get. The profits, the profit from the 2 books up to now have all gone to charity. I'm not doing that in the next one, because although I don't need it, Pat has told me it's time I looked after me. But yes, the books up to now, all the money's gone to charity. So, and I've stood the cost of the production of the books and everything else. But that's by the by. So, well, yeah, sorry.
Yeah, no, I'm just thinking, I mean, so at a very young age, you knew there was something different about you, and you also got a taste of leaving your body and having, these different experiences. And I can't help but think when we're younger, and our mind is more at peace, this is when these things come in. But then when we start getting busy in life, and not to mention all the technology and things happening, I don't want to say it turns off that channel in our mind, but you don't pay as much attention to it because your mind is so busy. Is that right?
I believe that. I believe that when we're born, we are gifted. We have got all the gifts that I use today, I had when I was born. And as I've gone through my life, all those gifts have been eroded away through television, through mass media, through different things. We've been consciously changed. And so we don't use those gifts anymore. And we're relearning them. It's all about now we're finding the talents again. I go to different spiritual events on the island here. And some of the kids today have got fantastic talent. I run a development group. And I say I run a development group. The truth is I ran my first development group on Wednesday night, because I want to show these kids, these young people, just how talented they really are. And they are talented. It's the best group out of all the groups I go to. It is the best group, because most people go to these meetings, they want a message, and that's fine. That's what they go for. But I say I'm a medium. I am a medium. I'm a psychic. I'm a healer. I'm a universal being. I'm all of those things. We are all of those things. And you can't define yourself as just being a medium. Mediumship is just a very small part of an immense thing. It's sort of, how big is my mind? My mind is as big as the universe, because my mind is the universe. It's, I get passionate about this.
Yeah, it's good.
I want to see these kids develop the skills that I've got, because they've got them. They just don't realize they've got them.
It's a whole different way to live life, I believe, to know or be tapped into some of these spiritual truths, than to not acknowledge them, get busy in life, and then, someday you start questioning, is there life after death? Does my life have a meaning? I mean, to have those tools early on in life and have a foundation of belief, I think one can live a whole different kind of life. So it's wonderful that you're encouraging these young people in that. But Alec, I want to ask you about how the book came about. What happened after Pat departed this earth that you started hearing from her? Or how did that come about, and what happened?
Okay. Well, Pat had chemotherapy, which is the done thing. I don't believe in it. And in fact, now she's told me she doesn't believe in it.
Chemotherapy?
She believes it killed her.
Okay.
But she had, and she was only ill for 12 months. It was 12 months from the day she was diagnosed till the day she died.
Breast cancer.
Oh, passed over.
Yeah.
The last 2 months, after we were told that she'd got 2 months to live. But they still gave her chemotherapy. And it made her really ill. In fact, it took her down.
Sure.
But while she was in the hospitals all the time, strange things started happening. I'd have whistling in the house. I'd hear music, angelic type music. But the radio wouldn't be on, or the television wouldn't be on. And I'm a believer in angels. My mum was, and I believe in the angelic zone. And I knew that they'd come to help. The day we had all the family there to tell them the bad news, the only time we got them all together was if it was something major. The nitty-gritty bits of the illness, we didn't get them involved in. There was no need. And we were stood in the kitchen, and I had my back to the taps, the kitchen sink. And I was talking to the kids about it. And a hand was placed on my shoulder. And I knew then that we had the help of the angels in our house. And they were there to support us. Going on to the day Pat passed away, the day before, something just, I don't know what it was, in my head, made me ring a friend of Pat's, a lady called Yvonne, and ask if she wanted to go and see her in the hospice. Pat was now in a hospice. And she said she did. So I arranged to pick her up and take her. When we went, we talked about this and that and nothing at all, really. But when we walked into the room, Pat's body was 2 or 3 feet off the bed, and it was covered in golden white light. And I'm thinking, what's going on here? You know, is this something between Yvonne and Pat? Because I believe Yvonne to be an earth angel. So I said, look, I'll leave you to it. I'm going to go and talk to the sister. So I went out, and the sister told me that Pat had a bad night. She had internal bleeding, and her time was coming very soon. When we were in the car going back, Yvonne was asking me all strange questions about regression and different things, which I agreed I did believe in and things. I'm just going to move forward from that. On that night, we'd been out for dinner with the kids, and we'd gone to bed early because it had been a long day, and we had the call to say we were needed at the hospice. When we got there, Pat's breathing was very heavy. And I sat down beside her, and the kids were all around us. And her sister, a nursing sister, was sat at the back. And I just told her to calm down. Just calm down. And she opened her eyes. And I said, look, we're all here. All the family's here. You're fine. It's time to go. We all love you. But it's time for you to go. So just close your eyes, go to sleep. And that was it. She closed her eyes and passed.
Wow.
I went outside into a corridor to get my breath back, really. But I've got to say, although it was very, very emotional, it was the most beautiful experience I've ever had. I went back into the room, and instead of sitting at the chair I'd been on, I went to the other side of the bed, and I sat there. And I don't know how this happened, but her hand wrapped itself around my thumb. And I could hear her in my head saying, don't go yet, I'm not ready. Just stay a bit longer. And I sat there with her for an hour. And then I left the room. On the way home, I said to her, look, you let me know you're all right, and I'll be all right. Because I've got to say, Sandra, I've always believed in life after death. It's never been a thing for me. I've always believed. She never.
Oh.
But I did.
Okay.
And we used to laugh and joke about it. I used to say I'd come back and haunt her. It worked the other way in the end. So that morning when I got up, I rang my sister in the northeast to tell her the news. And she just said, she's passed, hasn't she? And I said, yeah. At 2 o'clock this morning, she said, I know, she's already been here. She told me what she was dressed in. Her hair was in a bob. She looked absolutely beautiful. And what Pat was doing, Sandra, she was telling the one woman in my life who I would believe that she was okay.
Beautiful.
And that put the whole family at ease, because we then knew that she was okay. The rest, really, of that part of it was up to the funeral and everything. It was easier because we were at ease, we were relaxed. Mm-hmm. The service itself was immense. It was a humanist service. She wasn't religious. She was a Christian. She believed in God, but she wasn't religious. Mm-hmm. And a daughter-in-law and a friend of the family, they stood up and said nice words about her. And, the church, they were outside, the church was just absolutely packed. And it was lovely. But that was the first experience that I knew. That was quickly followed on when a friend of mine died. He was distant family, if you like. Mm-hmm. And because the family had come down for Pat's funeral, they were a bit reluctant to travel all the way again to another one. And so I said I would go. And I went to this lad's funeral, and the usual thing at a crematorium, and the vicar said, we'll say a prayer for John, and we all bowed our heads. And I wasn't in that room anymore. I was in a room of white light. And in the white light, there was no floors, no ceilings, no windows, no doors. It was just white light. And Pat was there with her dad.
Wow.
And I couldn't believe it. I didn't know what was going on. So I lifted my head and looked around. The service was going on. The vicar was in the corner talking about John. And so I put my head back down and I was back in the light. Do you know what? I stayed there.
Sure.
I never moved. I waited until the service was finished, and then I'd got a smile from ear to ear. Mm-hmm. And I had to stop that, because obviously the people around me were grieving for this lad. Mm-hmm. And I went and saw the two daughters, and I said, look, you know my story. I've lost my way. I'm not coming to the wake or anything like that. I've done what I needed to do. I wish you all well. I hope to see you all again. And I got in my car. I sat in my car, and it just filled with the smell of lavender and flowers. It was absolutely fantastic. And I just said to her, thank you for coming and helping me. After all the events, I always used to ring Yvonne and say, oh, you'll never guess what's happened now. And I rang her and I told her what had happened. And do you know what? She wasn't surprised. She really wasn't surprised. And so those were the first early parts of, but I believe it's the love. The glue that binds us together is unconditional love. And that's what I had for my wife.
Yes.
I'm not saying my wife had that for me. Now I'm being honest there.
Okay.
I don't think it was unconditional. It was love. She told me she loved me. She was going to marry me, and we were going to be together forever, and we are. So she must have been spiritual in her own way, really, because she had it right on. But the unconditional love came from me, and Pat's love was great, but it wasn't because she was jealous.
I see.
She had the green-eyed monster, and this was down to the past.
Yeah, exactly. That's where it comes from.
I've written about this, and it's about getting rid of the baggage before you move on. Why carry the weight of all that rubbish around you into a new relationship, a new life, or whatever? Mm-hmm. What is the sense in doing that? Well, it took us 2 years to get over the baggage, but once we did, we had a fantastic life. It didn't last a long time. We were together 13 years. It didn't last forever in terms of earth time, but it'll last forever in universal time.
It sure will.
In fact, she came through to me at a meeting about a month ago, and she said, you can do what you want while you're down there. but don't get married again because I'm waiting for you here.
Oh, I've heard the opposite from people as well, that they encourage them to live on their lives, but oh,
Oh, yeah, she's not saying don't live your life.
mm-hmm.
My family are very, very proud of what I'm doing.
They must be.
And I know that because they tell me. I have done radio before, and my very first radio was a Manchester radio program, Critical Mass Radio, and it was done on the 23rd of December 2013. And the publishers of my books were there because they'd set this interview up with the lad. And my dad, who'd been dead 28 years, was stood in the corner watching me.
Alec, I want to ask you how the books came along. I mean, did you get messages from Pat? And also, it sounds like you, in the process of all this, you've developed your own mediumistic abilities. Is that right in saying that?
Yeah, I think so. The message, all this started was after. I'm just following through a bit from out of the books, really,
okay.
to give you an idea of the flow of the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
About 6 months after Pat had passed away, I'd lived my life in a bubble. I was oblivious to what was going on outside, really. And I didn't bother the kids with it because they were grieving. They got their own grief to deal with.
Yes.
Oh, we met up from time to time, but I didn't discuss mine. I put the brave face on and everything. But you know what? I was hurting. And there come a time when I could have self-harmed. But I am a very strong character. And I asked for help at a local hospice. They couldn't get anyone out to me, counsel out to me for a week. In the meantime, the kids and I decided to give some money to a charity that had helped Pat, one of the charities that benefits from the books. And so I went to see Yvonne because she had a lot to do with that particular charity. And I rang and asked if I could bring her something round. And I went round to the house and I met her husband, Paul. Now, she told me he was a medium, and I didn't really have a lot of time for mediums, if I'm honest.
Mm-hmm.
So he was nice bloke. And in 3 hours that night, they sorted me out. He showed me a door. I walked through that door. And I knew I would never turn round, and I haven't. He sorted me out. I'd got a big overdose of guilt about a relationship I'd had years before. Something that couldn't be put right because that lady had passed away. And he just sorted different bits out, and then he said, there's so much confusion, he said, and it's you. You have got this great big lump of guilt hanging off you. And if you could just see what's beyond that, you are going to have the most amazing life. And I said, well, how do I do that? And Yvonne said, go home, write it all down on a piece of paper, go outside, set fire to it, and say to the universe, I forgive myself.
Mm-hmm.
And I did that. And I felt this great lump drop off my back onto the floor. And from that day on, I never cried again. I used to go to bed crying and wake up crying. I didn't do that anymore. And when I went to see the counsellor, the next day I went back to Yvonne and Paul and I said what had happened. And Yvonne said to me, you know, Alec, mediums and spiritualists would give their right arm to do what you're doing. To walk in white light. She said they would give their right arm. You are a very powerful person.
Yes.
And I can only be a very modest sort of bloke can only go by what she said and believe her.
Mm-hmm.
But I just, and he said to me, I run a spiritual group on a Wednesday. If you want to come to it, you're welcome. If it's not for you, so be it. But you're welcome to come. So I said, yeah, okay, I'll do that. In the meantime, I went to see the counsellor, the grief counsellor.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, look, Linda, I don't want to mess you about, but I feel as though I'm sorted. I've been to see Paul and Yvonne Kelly, and she knew Paul and Yvonne, and she said, I understand that. She said, but grief is many things, and you need to work your way through it all. So yeah, it made sense. So we had that counselling session. So I've got to tell you, there's orbs all around your head, and Pat is very much with you. So we did that, and we carried on. And I did that for six weeks. I had a point where that many spirits coming through my head of a night, I had to tell them to go away and let me grieve. And that's because once the universe knows you're open to this,
Mm-hmm.
there's thousands of them out there wanting to get through and give you a message for somebody or other, and it was just manic. And Linda said to me, Alec, tell them to go away and let you grieve. You need to grieve.
Yes.
And I did that. And then when I was ready again, I started it up. Well, I went to my first meeting with Paul, and we did this circle thing, and it was the idea was to see how much spirit energy was there and how much energy there was from about 8 of us, I think it was 7 or 8. I was sat next to an American lady who was visiting one of the other people, and Paul started off about a lady in the American South who had 3 kids, who'd lost her husband. She was making a living by digging for gold, and there was an American South lady, a black lady, helping her. Very colourful, and this girl, it was her grandmother, and that sort of developed. And I'm sat there, I've just taken it all in, I suppose, and this black American lady, as large as life, appeared in front of me. Well, I was absolutely shocked.
Mm-hmm.
I just got up and I walked out.
Oh my gosh.
I walked out into this other room, and I sat down, collecting my thoughts. I didn't know what had happened. Did I go to her? Did she come to me? I didn't know what the hell had happened, to be honest. And this Jamaican girl said to me, are you all right? And I said, no, I'm not. I don't understand. She said, Alec, you don't have to understand, except you are going to know more and more. You're going to see more and more and more as the weeks go on. So don't worry about it. So I went back in the room and continued. That was my first experience of spiritualism,
Wow.
mediumship.
Yeah.
And it was strange, but it was exciting.
Sure it was.
I think that's the thing about it, is it was exciting. Not long after that, when I talk about the children, they're my stepchildren, they're Pat's children.
Mm-hmm.
The youngest daughter was getting married. Now, I mean, when Pat was alive, she'd said to me, Sue's getting married in July. I said, yeah. She said, would you mind if I go and buy some clothes and that? I said, nah, get out there, go and get what you want, So she bought 2 dresses, 2 hats, 2 pairs of shoes. You know what, Sandra? She knew and I knew she wouldn't be there.
Mm-hmm.
But she was going to be part of it.
Right.
And on every wedding photograph, there's me holding a little picture of Pat.
Oh.
To say she was there.
Of course she was.
So that was the thing. The meetings went on, and I developed the skill of channeling. Words started to come. I never used to use a writing pad at the meetings. I used to I've got quite a good memory. Mm-hmm. But then I started words just flowing. So I started writing things down. And I went to a meeting with a pad, and they all looked at me because I'd never took a writing pad before. And it was, I tell you when it was March the 18th, 2014. And I know that because it's my birthday.
Oh.
And I'd gone in, and this one of the girls said, "Well, I've got a birthday present for you that I've been told from them upstairs that I've got to get for you." And she bought me this beautiful leather-bound book, writing book. And I said, "Well, Jess, I'll tell you one thing. I will use it, but I won't scribble in it. I will write. Everything I write, I'll rewrite in this book." And I did religiously. Every bit of channeling that I did went in the scrapbook. Then it was handwritten into the big book. And then it was put onto Word on the computer. So every book's been written 3 times, really.
Well, you definitely got the message.
It's hard work, you know.
Yes.
And when I'd finished my second book, I took that back to her and I gave it as a gift to her.
That's nice.
You gave me as a gift. Well, I've worked my magic with it, and this is your gift now. And she treasures that.
Well, the messages in Granddad, You Have a Message 1 and 2, are they short messages, long messages? What kind of things are in these messages?
Can I read one to you?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, this is from book 2. In fact, I've just put this on the internet today, this bit. It's called We Are the Way. Give us grace, energy, purity, and light. Show us the way to reach our goal, our destiny. Allow us to develop in a loving and caring way, mindful of others and their needs, but respecting and being aware of our own. Create for us a world of calm, peace, and tranquility, where the peoples of the earth live as one, in harmony with each other. Who do we ask for all these things? Us. For we are the way and the light, one man, one God, for this is the way.
And that just came to you and you just wrote down the words you heard.
I wrote it down, and I just, and that's how it works, and I've got 2 of these. I've got another one of these finished, but it won't be published for a while. I've got another one half finished, but that won't be published for a while. And I've just started writing, another book, which is Spirit Families of the 21st Century.
What is that about?
Oh, my God. Well, the second bit, the second chapter is about the spirit family that lives with me here.
Well, tell us more about that.
Okay, well,
yes.
At first I thought there was just 2. There was a lady, Phyllis, and a young boy, 9-year-old, Barry. And, oh my God, they play havoc with the electrics and all sorts of things. But I've been researching them. On the estate I live on, there used to be a very big house here, and it was owned by Lord and Lady Stanley. And they had about 100 staff. And my house is built on the garden. I know that Phyllis was either by address, it's Edwardian, 1919, 1920, 1915, that sort of era. Mm-hmm. And the way she is, and her deportment and everything, I would say she was the nanny or the housekeeper. Barry dresses in the way I would have dressed to go to school in 1950, because clothes didn't change very much between the 20s and the 50s because of the 2 world wars.
Okay.
And so we were pretty much the same. It was in the late 50s, the 60s, Carnaby Street, and when clothing in this country really took off. So they're definitely Edwardian. So as she came, she's been to see me a couple of times. She's very reticent. She doesn't say much. It's like pulling teeth, really. The boy speaks, but he speaks in Welsh. Now, I speak Geordie, English and rubbish. I don't speak Welsh. But he came through to me about 6 weeks ago, and he showed me a baby. And that answered something for me, because she sings lullabies, this woman, in the middle of the night. Well, you don't sing lullabies to a 9-year-old boy.
Right.
But the baby, that solves that. And then he brought through a Welshman, which is his dad. So I got the whole family here. I've been researching, how does one family die sort of all together? I mean, some sort of tragedy, perhaps.
Right.
Whatever. So I've been researching that, and I find that in 1919, there was a pandemic of Spanish flu that raged through the world. It took about 10 million people altogether. Mm-hmm. And Holyhead wasn't unscathed. So after I found that out, I came back, and I was going to bed one night, and she was stood in the corner, and I just said to her, "What do you know about the Spanish flu?" As you get to know me, Sandra, you'll know I don't lie. That spirit came to me, and she put her arms around me, and the energy between the two of us was like a bomb going off. It was absolutely fantastic. So powerful. And I thought, so that's a yes, is it? So I believe now that they died from the Spanish flu. Mm-hmm. I still haven't got a surname for them. So finding out exactly, it's impossible. I did find a picture of the big house with all the staff. And I've tried with a magnifying glass to pick them out, but it's not a good picture. So that hasn't worked. So I've now asked the universe to help me with this. I talk to the universe a lot.
Nothing wrong with that, because even when you said earlier, when you'd go to bed with a problem and you'd wake up with the answer, somebody's listening.
Yep, definitely. So I've got that family. Going back, just after Pat died, I started to relinquish a lot of my clients. And I'd got a very good client who I'd known for a long, long time, lived in West Yorkshire and on a farm in a Saxon Viking village. And I took a friend of mine, a financial advisor, to meet her, and he was going to take over her business and look after her. She's quite a wealthy lady, and she really did need help. So we went up there, and while they were talking in the front room, I was sat at the back of the room. A spirit cat ran over my lap, and I thought, what's going on here? And the next thing I know, there's this chap stood next to me. He must have been 6 foot. And he was stocky. He got thick black curly hair. He wore a ruffled shirt with I don't know what they call some sort of tie thing. Riding boots, jumpers, a riding jacket. And he just stood there watching them. And he was just a little bit in front of me. So I don't think he noticed me. And then he was gone. So I never said anything to her because she lived in the place on her own. And I wouldn't want to frighten her. So within the group, so I never said nothing. So within the group, I'd read in a spiritual magazine that Stanley in County Durham was the spiritual centre of the Northeast. Well, I've got to say, Sandra, I've lived up there. And even the dead don't stay in Stanley. It's such a dump. But I hope there's not many people from Stanley listening to this program. However, we were going up there. So I rang this lady and asked if we could stay over on the way up there. Because it's about, I suppose, 250 miles from the Midlands. She said, yeah. And she wouldn't have any money. She said, I can't take money off you, all the things you've done for me. So we said, oh, okay, we'll take you out for dinner. So we took out for dinner. When we came back, Colin went to bed and Joe and myself were sat talking, and a lady appeared looking out the window. She'd got a long dress on, her hair hung way below her bottom, and it was tied in the middle of her back with a ribbon. And she was just looking out onto the Yorkshire Dales, which I've got to say is absolutely stunning. I find out that the farmhouse in the 17th century was a creamery. It had cows there. They milked the cows there. They made cheese and butter there and all sorts of things. Anyhow, she then disappeared, and I said to this girl, right, I'm going to bed. So I went to bed, and I got into bed, and I could smell cow dung. God, it was overpowering. And I'm thinking, where has this come from? This hasn't been a farm for 300 years. Where is this smell coming from? And I turned over, and the two of them were stood there watching me. They turned to walk away, and I just said to him, don't go. What is your name? And he turned, and I could hear him saying, John Williams. So I then started, well, the next morning, we went downstairs. Colin said, anything? And I said, well, yeah, but what about you? He said, I saw my mum last night for the first time in 17 years.
Wow.
Since she passed away. So that was fantastic. Then I said what I'd seen, and he said, are you going to tell her? And at that moment, this lady came in with a toast and that, and she said, tell me what?
Yeah, of course.
What have you seen? So I told her, she said, well, I'll help you out. And she told me the history of the farm. So this family were living there in this farmhouse as though it was their time.
Yes.
So they were still in the 17th century.
That's crazy.
Okay?
Wow.
And
yeah.
I'm thinking, well, who the hell did he think I was?
Right.
Okay? So, a time traveler, perhaps. Don't know. So, I did a bit of research, and I found that there'd been a copper mine in the village as well all those years ago. Well, the lady left the farm and she moved back to Birmingham. So I asked the universe if I could talk with John Williams of Gunnersata and in Yorkshire, and he came. And he told me he was from South Wales, that he was the manager of the copper works, that they lived in a flat in the farm, the upstairs was a flat, and that they had a boy. And the lady who owned the farm confirmed to me that another medium had been there and he'd seen a boy. So there's a family of three in a farmhouse in West Yorkshire living there today as though it is 1657.
That's incredible. Yeah, I had someone on.
You tell me, do we die?
Yeah, no. Question though, I had someone on not too long ago, and he's one of these, like ghost hunters, and he helps people cross through the light, and he would call people earthbound spirits. I don't know if you're familiar with any of those terms.
I'm a gatekeeper.
What does that mean?
That means I open the gate and let people through. That's what I'm trying to do for this family here.
Okay. All right. So it's a different language for the same thing. Like help them through. Interesting. Yeah, there is no death. I'm clear. Alec, we only have a few minutes left. I would like you to describe some of the things that are in your books. Granddad, you have a message 1 and 2, just because I know there's many people listening right now, and what kind of things could they help to find? Is there hope for grief? Is there talk about life? Is it talk about forgiveness, lessons? I mean, why would we want to read it, or what impact would it have on us?
Okay, I think the two books, the Granddad books, are basically, they are my emotional states and my conscious thoughts and unconscious thoughts. And the first book is more, I'd use the word technical, I think, but that's not quite the right word, I don't think. But it's quite powerful. The second book, Through the Eyes of a Child, is a bit more relaxed because as I was going through the grief, I was becoming more relaxed, and I think that affected the way the books came out. The second book has got pictures in that my 9-year-old granddaughter drew for me because the book's Through the Eyes of a Child. The third book is a journey through the grief and my walk from the dark into the light. And it's written in a way whereby I am talking to you. And we're discussing what's happening to me as I go through the book. In the hope that if you or the reader is going through a similar thing, they will come out the other end of the book with a bit of peace that I found, because that's been my journey through the grief. This third book is really a healing book. It's about healing. And the hope is, well, if just one person bought it and they got some peace of mind knowing that their loved one was still with them. Because really, in the time we've used, we have not touched anywhere near what it's all about.
No.
We haven't. You know, but the books, I believe, they're done in a size, they're small books, they fit in your handbag, they go by the side of the bed. You know, I'm going to read one to you now.
Do you know, I was just going to ask you, could you read one more thing before we finish the show? So you read my mind.
Which is how I read the books. I don't read them from cover to cover. Multi-consciousness. It's not in the thinking, but in the knowing that our loved ones past are always around us. Look, feel, hear, and you will surely sense their presence. For them to be able to stay with us, albeit in a different form, means as much to them as it does to us. The parallel world is much closer than many of us realize, and it's not till we cross over that we know just how close it really is. The spirit world is our world, but in a different consciousness. Do not think in terms of one consciousness, for we have many. And so it is not unnatural for us to be able to experience many other things, even though we may not fully understand. So look into your mind, consciousness, and you will find that your past loved ones are all around you, for this is the way.
That's beautiful. Thank you, Alec, for being our guest today.
Thank you, Sandra, for having me.
Yeah, I'm excited to follow your writing, and your website is granddadbooks.com. And we can see your books and find out more about you and be able to keep in touch with you. It really has been wonderful to listen to your journey and have you share about Pat. And I'm a single gal, so I hope that someday I get to experience that love.
I'm sure you will.
Yeah, really beautiful. So thank you so much.
It's been my pleasure, and I've thoroughly enjoyed myself. And I hope you invite me back.
Oh, of course. And I do a lot of traveling, so I love the visual.
Can I just mention one other thing?
Sure, of course you can.
My Irish friend is going to kill me if I don't, because he listens to you every week.
Oh,
every show he listens to. His name's Paddy Bowes. He's a medium. He is organising the launch of my book in Ireland for me. I've not launched any of the books in Ireland before, but it'll be launched in Carlow in the next 6 weeks. And he would just like you to know that the spirit world is healthy in Ireland, and religion hasn't dogged it down to the last. It's doing really, really well.
Oh, fantastic.
He runs a spiritual group, and he's a great man. And he is the guy who introduced me to you.
Oh, that's wonderful. And Patty, I know you're listening right now. I would love to have you as a guest on the show. And also for our listeners, you may be someone who wants to be a guest on our show, and you don't have to have a book written. You just have to have some stories of why you know life after death is real and have an intent to help others on their journey. That's all I ask. If somebody is interested in being a guest on the show, email me, sandrachamplain@gmail.com. So lastly, I want to just say to our listener, thank you for taking the time to listen. I love hearing about people's journeys and even hearing from you the difference that these episodes make in your life. I've gotten some beautiful messages, email, and even the comments on when the shows air on YouTube. So thank you for that. And as a reminder, you can go to WeDon'tDieRadio.com and you can click on all the past episodes. If you listen on iTunes, they only keep the last 100, but we have well over 160 episodes that, like Alec had said, grief can bring you into a dark place. And I know many people have hit such a painful place that may not have hurt themselves, but have considered it. And I can't even tell you how many emails that I've gotten that people said this show saved their lives. And they chose not to do physical harm because of the hope that's been given. So that is my passion. That is why I share, to make lives a little brighter and to know that you're not alone. And so in closing, my name is Sandra Champlain. I've been your host on We Don't Die Radio, and I do believe that life is an education for the soul and that your life here on earth is important. So I want to really thank you for listening, and we'll see you soon.